I'm Dean Newland, and welcome to Leadovation. Reimagine, facilitate, flourish. This podcast is dedicated to the art and science of innovative leadership. Through insightful interviews with industry experts, I bring you cutting-edge strategies and experiences of innovative leadership, helping you think differently, act strategically, and achieve remarkable results. Join me as I provide insights and tools that empower you to make smarter decisions, forge meaningful relationships. Welcome to Leadovation. Today's conversation is about courage. Not the loud, chest-out kind, but the quiet kind that tells the truth with your whole heart. My guest is Justine Froelker, and she takes us back to a small town in Iowa and 2 back surgeries that bookend her high school years, and 6 months at a time in a body cast, misdiagnosed, in real pain, and living through the kind of isolation most of us can't fully understand. And from that experience, she didn't just bounce back, she learned to see people, to notice what care looks like, what pity feels like, and why being truly supported requires something braver than advice. We talk about why empathy gets weaponized at work and why empathy and accountability are not opposites. Lesson 1, you can demand results and lead with care. In fact, you'll get more from people when they feel met, when they are managed, and when they know that they're being cared for. Lesson 2, connection starts with vulnerability. Sometimes you have to let people in before they can meet you. If your team feels tired, guarded, or disconnected, this episode is a reset, not for your strategy, but for your humanity. Justine, great to have you.
Thank you, Dean. I am excited to be here.
Your big word is courage.
Yep.
Why did you choose that? Why is that so important to you in this day and age?
Yeah. So the Latin root word of courage means to tell your story with your whole heart. And for me, I want and work to do 2 things really. Teach people how to live that out loud and also model it for them. Your strongest tool in the toolbox is to model the work. Be the leader that you want your people to be the adult you want your children to grow into. And so modeling the work is our strongest tool. And in my work, like we throw around, courage is my value, or we have a courageous team here, or a courageous culture. And my question is like, what does that mean? And how does that show up in behavior, in our daily choices, and the words that we speak to one another? Like if I were to observe your team for a week or follow you around for a week, would I be able to name your values to you? Would I be able to say like, yeah, that's courage. You all are living into your story wholeheartedly and living it out loud, and not just words on a website, but words to one another in our kind communication and clear communication, and also most especially in our actions.
So the word courage to me sounds like it has a contrast, meaning there's something we need to be, we have to use courage for a purpose, because without courage, I suppose the flip side of that could be, I don't know, we could be depressed, we could be inactive, we could be overly tolerant, we could be off mission, we could enable other behavior that is not conducive to highest and best, right? Was there something, if I may go into your personal life a little bit, was there something that caused you to go, I found my courage in this activity, this event, ergo, I found it to be so successful that now I want to make a business out of it? What started this journey?
Yeah. I have a story that I have many, many, many reasons, which I think we all do, because life is hard and it's complicated. But I have a story that I could have easily chosen to be bitter, chosen to be sick, chosen to be defined by the hard parts of my story. And part of this work for me is teaching people how to make sure the hard parts of your story are not your entire story. They are simply part of your story. And so I actually, in high school, I had 2 back surgeries, and I was in a body cast each surgery for 6 months. So I'm talking like chin to knees body cast. So my first surgery was the summer before my freshman year. And then I was the 10% that the surgery did not take, and they had to repeat it. And so that was the summer before my senior year of high school. And so like that really did, that set me in the trajectory that I am in, because I was, on top of that, I was misdiagnosed for a year and a half until they found a broken back on a year-old x-ray.
And this is all during a time when you're supposed to be out dating and being at the peak of your adolescent social journey, and you are in a cast from chin to hips, chin to knees.
Chin to knees. So I was either standing up or lying down.
And you're going to school during all this?
So I grew up in small town Iowa. So like I'm talking like a small town, no stoplight, kindergarten through 12th grade, one building. And so my English teacher would videotape her class. I had another teacher come to my house and teach me.
Wow.
Once I was up and kind of a little bit mobile on crutches and things like that, I could, like, especially the first surgery, it was a body like a plaster cast. The second surgery was a brace, but it was still chin to knees. But like, so I would have to go to like my science lab, right? And so like my best friend would wheel me with the wheelchair, and like I live in a small community, and so like the Lions, I think it was the Lions Club, that they built the ramp outside of my house. The Legion donated the hospital bed. Like people rallied. They showed up,
wow.
and but it's what planted the seed for me to, because my background is I'm a therapist by trade. And so when I was misdiagnosed, one of the first misdiagnoses that I got was, I mean, back then, this was early 90s. So that's why the body cast, right? Like nowadays they don't do that. They get you up and moving right away. They probably put titanium into your back, things like that. But back in the 90s, like we didn't know what we know now. But one of the first misdiagnosis that I got was actually conversion hysteria, which is what we now know as psychosomatic. So like my brain was making it up and there was nothing wrong with me. And so they made me go see a
That's what they thought. They thought you were just making this stuff up.
Oh yeah. And that was after they put cameras into my hip joints while I was awake.
That must have felt good.
Yeah. Like that was like truly to this day. Like, I mean, when you have a life of trauma, like memories are special, right? And so I don't remember a whole lot of things, but like there's some seared moments, and that test was one of them, because is one of the most painful ones. And that was the one that like they're like, nah, nothing's wrong. You're gonna because I was a dancer. I grew up to be a dance. I had always danced, and that's what I wanted to go to college for. And they're like, your mom is making you dance, and my mom was like, no, I'm not. Do you know how much our family sacrifices for this? Like, we don't want her to dance. And so they made me go see a sports psychologist. And I remember being in her tiny office and her saying like, I don't think that this is the correct diagnosis. They can't find what's wrong. And so she goes, I'm going to teach you how to visualize your pain outside of your body. I mean, she didn't know I had a broken back, right? Like,
but she did know that you were in pain.
Right. She knew I was in pain, but she also knew like I wanted to dance. Right. And so, and I remember thinking, so that I was 12 at that point, like 12, 13. And I remember thinking like, what you do is kind of cool. And so after you go through this, my high school years are bookended by body cast and in reality feeling pretty alone, because it's I do a lot of teaching on empathy and accountability when I work with teams and leaders and things like that. And so like, I think one of the things that really planted the seed for that is, how does one really empathize with a 14 and then a 17-year-old who is literally trapped in a body cast? How do you empathize? How do you just like not feel sorry for her? Except when you felt sorry for me, I was literally even more alone than I already felt.
When you felt people were feeling sorry for you.
Oh, pity. Which, I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, I was stuck in a body cast. And so when I left Iowa, I went out of state for college, and I studied psychology from the very beginning. I started my career when I was in Kirksville, Missouri at Truman State. I worked in the substance abuse clinic there all throughout my years in undergrad. And so I've always had the, like, what makes people courageous? What makes them resilient? What makes people choose resiliency versus victimhood in reality? And now I get to do that work with organizations and teams.
I'm amazed that a 12-year-old got to learn about intentionality and visualization. That's not normally
Right.
something that you hear a 12-year-old learning how to
Right.
do. Maybe
Right.
when you're in your college years and you're thinking about the upcoming heat, the
Yeah.
game, the sports thing, you're always talking about that. So could I ask, what was just because now I'm curious,
Yeah.
the circumstance that caused the back to have its issues?
Yeah.
Were you
So
dancing? Was it something else?
yeah. So what they always told us is that it was, once it was found, because my last misdiagnosis was actually fibromyalgia, which in 94, we did not know what we know about fibromyalgia now, like as an autoimmune disease and things like that. And so
Hmm.
a specialist was literally traveling the country helping people with this diagnosis. And she spent 4 hours going through all my charts. And she walked out with an x-ray in her hand. And she was like, spondylosis, spondylolisthesis. And we're like, no idea what those are. And she goes, they're actually all over your charts. And we're like, we don't know what that is. And she goes, you have a broken back, 2 cracks on L5 with a grade 4 slippage. You need surgery immediately.
But
She
what
goes, it's
caused
right.
that? Was that
Yeah.
what
And she
was it?
goes,
What?
and it's right here on this like year old x-ray. And so it was a common injury with football players and dancers. Like, it's a
No
fairly common
kidding.
injury.
Really?
And it's usually found well before the vertebra has slipped. And so it can usually be healed by like some bed rest and therapies and medications and things like that. But mine was 2 cracks and grade 4 slippage. So they needed to do a bone fusion right away.
Oh my
And
gosh.
stick me in a body cast.
All right. So I have to finish this story here.
You had no
There,
idea that was coming, did you?
no, I love it. It's just so rich. But so when a person has the loss of sight for a period
Yeah.
of time, you hear stories of their other senses coming alive,
Ooh, yeah.
hearing, touch, taste, and so forth.
Sure.
What came alive for you trapped in your body for 2 6-month stints?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was, I mean, I've always been a feeling person, like felt deeply and felt a lot. And so I think it definitely, my self-awareness started growing very early in my life. It also, though, my observance of other people and their feelings and how they relate to others, um, I have a very, very clear lens for that. And it started then, um, because you see you see so many reactions to that situation.
Hmm.
And I mean, that was 94, 97. So we didn't have social media to rally people, like, I mean, I remember, like, my second surgery, our insurance would not pay for a nurse to stay with me. And so, I didn't really, like, I didn't need I just needed, if I dropped the remote, I couldn't pick it up. I needed someone to help me to the bathroom. And so my
Mm.
parents paid my oldest best friend to be my nurse that summer.
God, I can only imagine. I mean, your parents
And
must have been going through
yeah,
a whole other series
right.
of
Oh, for
gyrations
sure.
just
For
watching
sure.
their daughter. Oh my gosh, that's just amazing. So, thank you for that story. That's an incredible story.
It's
You don't
crazy.
hear that very often, but I often, there's something's great um, hardship
Yeah.
can be a portal into great insight and great,
100%.
yeah. And you said that one of the things that came out of that for you was empathy
Yeah.
for others, and you said you've always been a feeling person.
Mhm.
Um, I want to kind of dig into empathy a little bit
Yeah.
as to what do you mean in your definition when you say empathy, because I could go a couple of different ways,
Yep.
especially when you said the comment, others can't really empathize with a 17-year-old who's stuck in a body cast. And I guess my question is that necessary for us to feel what it's like for somebody else to go through what they're doing in order for them to feel supported?
Yeah, great question. Well, and I think like many, there are a lot of terms I think right now in our world that are being weaponized, and empathy is one of them.
Why do you think
I think,
that? Why is empathy a weaponized word?
I think a lot of people are and when I'm with teams and leaders, a lot of times I hear leaders like, okay, I get it. You want me to be an empathic leader, and I freaking need people to do their job. Like seriously, I need them to do their job. And so that's when I get to teach that empathy and accountability are not mutually exclusive, even though that's what many of us think or have been taught. You are actually more likely to get what you need and want from your people when you first meet them with care, compassion, and empathy. Empathy empowers people to make a move, to get unstuck versus it's not fixing people, it's not doing stuff for them. That enables people. And so empathy for me is I'm going to choose to sit beside you and seek to understand your lived experience. That means I ask, what is your lived experience like?
Which may not mean that I ever truly understand what it's like to have all the body sores on my arms and my legs because I've got my skin rubbing up against this cast. Nobody will ever know what that's like.
Right. That's that, like a lot of people will say like, well, empathy is walking a mile in someone else's shoes. No, it's not. Like you can't walk in my shoes. Dean, like we don't have the same size feet. We don't have the same size body.
That's a great metaphor. It's a great saying. I love it.
You can't walk a mile in my shoes. So like, can we 100% understand someone's lived experience? Probably not.
No. Yeah.
And two things. One, we can ask someone. We can ask them what it's like to experience their life. And then when they tell us, we believe them because it's their lived experience, not ours. The second part, though, for sure, which is this is a really big, when you teach empathy, especially in my trainings and things like that, this is what can get me super fired up. How often do we say the term like, well, I just can't imagine what they're going through? Yes, you can.
Yeah. Right.
We are literally the only species that has that part of we can imagine. If you worry about anything, you have an imagination. You can imagine what it's like to be a 17-year-old trapped at home in a body cast, or like my husband and I went through an infertility journey. You can imagine what it might be like for a woman to want to have kids but couldn't have them. You can imagine that because you're a human being with feelings. You don't have to have been through the exact same situation. So you can imagine, which is hard because it requires you to get vulnerable. And most of us don't like to get vulnerable. And more than that, you can simply ask someone, what's it like? And you seek to understand, not fully understand because it's probably not possible.
I see sometimes people taking what you said and extrapolating it to, I don't feel like people really understand me because they're not empathetic. They don't know what it's like to be me. So therefore, Stugatz to you, we don't feel heard because people don't really know what I've gone through. I think what you're making that distinction is I will never know exactly what it's like to be you, but I can ask questions. I can be sympathetic. I can seek to understand, but I will never know what it's like to be you. And I don't know whether in the end, people really need that.
I agree.
They need somebody who's shoulder to shoulder with them to feel the community, the connection, not necessarily that exactly what I go through.
Exactly. It's built in connection because the thing that comes up for me when you say there's people that they don't understand what I'm going through. They're not meeting me with empathy. And more times than not, when I kind of get curious about that, what I actually discover is because you haven't actually shared what your lived experience is like.
Right.
Like how many of us hold back or don't let people in, whether or not it's fear of judgment or we don't want to be a burden, whatever it might be. But you have to let someone in order for them to meet you with empathy. Because at the root of all of that is vulnerability. It's turning toward one another.
Did you experience that yourself when you were in your body cast?
Yes.
Meaning were you able to let people in? Meaning that, one could get bitter. I'm not saying you were, but I could almost feel myself being in that situation, and there would be a period of time where I would be bitter, like, gosh darn it, what's going on? Why did I do this? Do I deserve this? Thank you, God. You do all those things, but
Yeah,
Did you find that you had to let people in and that required an added level of vulnerability for you in order to do that?
for sure. Like, and you know what? I mean, we could also argue that what worked in my favor is that like I was literally trapped in a body cast. Like, and so in some ways it didn't feel like there was much of an option but to let people in because I was pretty helpless. Like, I mean, one of my so my little town in Iowa used to be known for the Polka Fest. Like, so we didn't learn how to square dance.
Which town is this?
Durant, Iowa. And most people have
Okay.
only heard of it because we do have a sign on I-80. So so
Yeah.
it's between the Quad Cities and Iowa City. And so
Yeah.
but we were known for this like Polka Fest. Like, I mean, all these like cute little old couples would come to our town in their big campers and their matching outfits. And I remember my friends, I don't remember if it was I'd have to ask my oldest friend Kelly C because she's got one of those memories that she remembers everything. But it was I don't remember if it was my first or second surgery, but they came and like we're going out. Like, we're just going to take you for a walk. You need to get some sunshine. And I was like, okay. Because also the Polka Fest was like a fun thing. Like, it was great food and there was bands and stuff like that. And I was like, I'm not going to the Polka Fest. You cannot take me to that. Like, I'll go for a walk around the block. You can wheel me around the block, but that's it. And they're like, okay. They, of course, took me to the Polka Fest. Right. Like, so I had these people that they pushed, right? They pushed because they loved. And so I think part of what I also teach people and is probably a result from this is like, let people love you, which means you have to let people in. And
Hmm.
that includes at work. Like, let people help you. Let people love you well. Let them lead you. That it does require you to be vulnerable and then and let them into the struggle though. Now, it doesn't have to be all of it. It doesn't have to be your deepest, darkest secrets. That's not appropriate. We always have to have boundaries, especially at work. And man, we're human beings. We need each other.
And sometimes it takes a bold person, a courageous person, to pierce their way into you. Not
100%.
that
So true.
that's a
Yeah.
bad
Yeah.
phrase, it sounds painful, but
Yeah.
to seek out a person who yet has not opened the doors for you to come in.
Yeah.
You are saying, I'm here
Yeah.
and you're not getting rid of me. I'm not saying you
Right.
go that far, right? But
Right. Right.
I'm
But
camping
like
out.
I'm
So
gonna love you. I'm gonna help you. Right. Yep.
that's really great. So I just find it a fascinating juxtaposition that here you are a dancer. I've known dancers. I
Yeah.
enjoy dancing.
Yeah.
The expression of movement and
Mhm.
flow and space and rhythm and music, and then to have the exact opposite experience
Mhm.
where you're trapped
Yeah.
literally in your body. I
Mhm.
mean, do you have, I have to ask, do you have a spiritual religious
Yeah.
um, framework that you were able to make sense of this lesson journey that you are on or were on?
Yeah. Back then, no. You know, I grew up in a family that was more like everything happens for a reason. We're not sure that we like that reason or trust that reason, and it is not through faith or like Jesus or
Right,
like a
right.
higher power. I didn't come to my faith until after my husband and I went through the infertility journey and ended it without
Mm.
kids. That's when I found my faith, and so like, and now, um, doing so much like continued healing work and things like that. Of course, God was there. Like, you have to
So
ask him, like,
that
"Where were you?"
sparked
Mhm.
that.
Oh, for
So
sure. For
so
sure.
that's another, I suppose that's another story, but you're saying that you went with your husband and you've had infertility issues,
Yep. Yeah.
and I can totally, I can't say that I know what it's like to be used, so hence
Yep.
our conversation
Yeah.
earlier, but my wife and I went through the same, my wife and I had an experience that reminds me of yours. Let me put it
Yep.
that way.
Yeah.
To the point where it was never a problem with the marriage. It was just that we wanted this experience.
Yeah.
And I remember very clearly saying, I think we're done trying this out in terms of
Yep.
that. So then we
Yeah.
went down the whole pathway of adoption,
Yeah.
and we went down that pathway, and we eventually did get a
Yeah.
child right out of the chute, as they
Yeah.
say. And to me, when we tell him, and he sees the same thing, or thinks the same thing, is the the way we find each other, child and parent, doesn't necessarily have to be through one of their
Yeah.
bodies. It could be
Absolutely.
through someplace else. But
So true.
I
It's
wish you
so
two
true.
the very best in that
Thank you.
process.
It's so fascinating every time what my infertility journey is really what brought me to really delve into the courage work and the research, especially. And um, I share that in all my events with corporations. And I had a woman reach out to me like years ago, and she goes, "I'm really thankful that you talk about that part of life." She goes, "I don't think a lot of people realize that like that is part of creating an inclusive team." Because just statistically, someone is working alongside someone who is going through IVF right now or
Hmm.
has suffered a miscarriage or a loss. And we have to talk about it. It's just part of the human experience. And so it's been one of those pieces that, we lost 3 babies in our infertility journey, and we knew adoption was not for us. And so I always tell my clients and things like that, like, you are part of my legacy. Like, I believe that you will be better human beings after spending time with me doing this work.
Hmm.
And that is part of my motherhood.
Hmm.
Um, and like it, it is that it comes back full circle. Like, that is the courage work. How do you make sure that the hard parts of your story don't become the old narratives that hold you back into never living into what your true identity is, into who you were really created to be, who you want to be? That's the courage work.
That right there is the theme of this conversation. You just nailed that. That's it. That's well said. Really well said. That's
Thank you.
brilliant. I was just noticing last night, we have a little hot tub in our backyard,
Yeah.
and I plopped myself in, and I was
Lovely.
reading a new study by Gallup,
Ooh.
and the overall engagement levels have come down from their 2020 highs. I think the reason why I didn't read the entire article, why it was so high, was because we were right in the middle of COVID. And
Yeah.
so we were afraid to lose our jobs. So, and plus we had the freedom and the exploration of working remotely. So of course,
Right.
we get to,
Right.
be in meetings with, our shorts on,
Right.
because we're on
Yes.
Zoom and they can only see top half, not bottom half.
Right.
But now, of course, it's at the lowest it's been, and I think it's like 31% of the entire workforce is considered to be engaged. That's a
Wow.
lot of people that are not engaged. And of course, all the statistics about what that means in terms of productivity and well-being
Absolutely.
and health insurance claims and all that. But they
Yep.
three things that they talked about, which one of them is exactly what you're talking about. The reason why was, one, I don't have any career pathing. Two, I don't feel like my company is investing in my development. And number three, I don't feel like people care about me.
Mhm.
The
Yep.
word care, empathy, the things
Yep.
we're talking about. I may
Yep.
not necessarily understand what it feels like to be in a body cast for
Yep.
6 months at a time for 2 times, but I can care about you.
Exactly.
Such a huge theme,
Huge.
especially in a day and time when we are so isolated from one another. It's like
Mhm.
a hunger.
It is.
It's like
It is.
it's like there is some water out there in the Sahara Desert. Everybody is so thirsty
They're
for what you're
so
talking
thirsty.
about.
Right. They're yearning for it. It's well, there are never any mistakes or coincidences, but I literally just scheduled my a LinkedIn post to go out tomorrow because yesterday was one. I mean, like business is starting to pick up for 2026 because I don't think I know any development speaker that did not have a hard 2025. It was just a difficult year. Like the first
Mm,
things cut when budgets are hard is
yeah.
development. Like,
Yep.
right. And so, and it's starting to pick up. And so yesterday I got like 2 yeses and two, like, no, we went with somebody else. But one of them was like, they had asked, they were like, we have a conference coming up and they are like large, 5,000 employees. We have a conference in April. We want you to be our keynote speaker. What are your fees? And I want to get on a phone call before you see my fees is the goal. Right.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and so I had never, like I said, can we hop on a quick discovery call, like 15 minutes so I can share a little bit more about what I do and hear more about what you're hoping for. And they ghosted me. Like they never got back to me. And then this third follow-up, she goes back and she goes, we just don't have the budget this year. We're going to have to go with someone internal. And so, I, it's going to post tomorrow on LinkedIn. Like one of the top things I hear after every keynote or workshop or event, virtual or in person, I will hear at least once, I am so thankful they brought someone in from the outside. I feel
Yeah.
so cared for. Like, I've learned so much from you
Mm,
that will help me at home and at work. Thank you for being here. That is one of the most common comments I get. One of the most common this isn't going to work right now, reasons I get from companies is we don't have the budget. We're going to have to go with someone internal. And is it going to be hard to hear? Yep. You do have the budget. You just choose not to spend it on your people. And make no doubt, people feel that. And that Gallup poll shows that.
Exactly.
I don't feel like people care.
Right.
And like they're not engaged because, and I can see you spending on other things, but you're not choosing to spend on my development. And that's development for leadership, but also well-being.
Yeah.
They see that.
It's our vernacular. It's our paradigm around how we view development, because we are a capitalist system. We built our companies based on spreadsheets that show profit and loss and debits and credits. And so if development doesn't have its own nice, cute little line item, it's especially when those who are writing the checks are thinking mostly from a paradigm of financial stewardship.
Yep.
They go like, I don't know whether or not this keynote speaker, how is that going to make us money or save us money in the short term? And we go like, well, it's hard for us to be able to define that. It
is. I think that's one of the hardest struggles of doing the work that we do is like, how do we help decision makers see that there is an absolutely return on investment? When your people feel cared for, feel connected, feel like they can live in their values while also upholding the organization's values, they work harder for you. They absolutely work harder for you. And you keep good talent in a time that it's very difficult to keep good talent.
And it's only going to get worse.
Absolutely plays into the bottom line and production and performance.
Right.
It's hard.
You see these like pendulum swings back and forth. Like, like the company has more of the power and so therefore they cut back on anything having to do with development. All of a sudden they're scared about losing good people. So, and the talent market starts getting skinny. So then it goes back in the other direction. It's like it's back and forth. I've seen it so many times in my career. Like you almost can predict what the next one's going to be,
Right.
And I don't know. I hope you're right. Maybe we are moving into a different swing, but it's a very strange time right now, given the fact that it's January of 2026. It's certainly the year or the era of disruption, if nothing else.
Mm-hmm. I think we have to be realistic, though. People are really, really tired. They're super burnt out.
Yeah.
And they're sicker than they've ever been. And that absolutely plays into their performance, their production, your insurance claims.
Yes.
And so what would it be like to pour back in, get back to people first? Because I'm not sure that your profit first is working. I don't think it is. And I think it has an ending point at some point, which there's always going to be some decision makers that they're okay going through people. And that's,
I think it's not an either or. I think it's an and. I think that I was talking to a nonprofit CEO yesterday down in Phoenix who heads up a very successful organization that's been growing. And she talks about mission and margin. We have to have the funds in order to do the mission. So it's almost like to separate one, you would need the other. So we have to have the financial stewardship. We have to be able to make money in order to support the people who are going to be doing the work. So it's much more holistic than it is siloed in our thinking.
So true.
That's fantastic. So anyway, talk about a little bit. I know you're a big fan of Brené Brown, and you've gone through some of her training, I believe, and you understand that model pretty well. You created a new model. Could you kind of briefly describe the differences and why you decided to create something different? Like, what did Brené get wrong? Or are you just putting your own personal branding spin on it?
Right. No, I was certified in Brené's work for 11 years. And her research, has changed the landscape, especially I think in leadership. And so Brené sold her IP to Better Up. And for me, it was just that time, it did not feel aligned with where I wanted to go. And there were pieces that really teaching Brené's work for so long for me, and of course I will admit, because I am a therapist, but there are pieces that we weren't allowed to go as into as I was seeing the need for in the room. So
give me an example.
The emotional regulation and emotional well-being, talking about grief, things like that. Also self-care, teaching people how to actually show up and take good care of their lives and their bodies. being in the corporate space for the last 7 years, teaching the courage work, people are not emotionally regulated and they are not caring well for themselves. They show up for everyone else except themselves. And so those are really big pieces that my courage is built here is just it's a bit more holistic to really treat the whole human being and just the pieces that people were kind of dying right in front of me.
Wow. So what's coming up for you in the future?
I've got I had 2025 for me was a year of creation and planting a lot of seeds. So I worked really hard on creating a suite of services to make my curriculum as accessible as possible at lots of different price points. So whether or not it's the book or it's the online course or I have a courage deck. So like a deck of 60 of my teaches that teams use in like their daily huddles or and their team meetings and things like that, just to do like a courageous check-in before getting to their agenda, to like all the way up to that full training or a keynote or a workshop or a series of events. And so I really, what I'm seeing now is teams who are really hungry and needing that full leadership development plan. Like, we want to bring you in and make you part of the development plan. I'm not teaching management skills. I'm teaching you the human skills to deal with the management skills, right? Oh, you want to implement lean culture? Great. I love it. That's amazing. Lean is amazing for manufacturing companies. And I need you to have the human essential skills to talk about when it goes wrong and do it with courage and manage the emotional upset that comes with all of that. And so there's a lot. I have several teams doing send leadership through my full training. And then we do workshops for the rest of the company, or they do the online course together and things like that. And then we meet for accountability sessions. I have an accountability session this afternoon with a team that's gone through the full training. So we meet all together and we just wrestle what are the hiccups they're having. We practice scenarios of having hard conversations, and because the work is really never done, the question is whether or not you're going to embed it.
Very good. Wow. I could keep talking to you for at least another hour here. How can people, Justine, find you? Talk about what's your website address, LinkedIn, all that kind of stuff.
Everything's my name, Justine Froelker. I think I'm the only one in the world. So the website's Justine Froelker. There you'll find just all kinds of information, including I have a newsletter that comes out on Saturday mornings. If you sign up for that, you can get a free boundaries download because people need help with boundaries. I'm a therapist, so I love teaching boundaries. I have my own podcast that comes out every Wednesday where I have conversations with people who have done the courage work with me in some capacity. We just talk about how it's showing up in their real life at home and at work. And then all my handles on social media are Justine Froelker. I try to share the courage work multiple times a week. I used to say I share the courage work more days than not. And I'm really kind of learning that there's just too much noise on social media. And so I'm being realistic about what I'm putting out there now.
This work, I believe, is more important now than maybe it's been in a long time. And I know that's sort of a grandiose statement, but as I look around and seeing what you're seeing in terms of the depression rates and the suicide rates and all of the stuff that is post-COVID brought into AI, everyone is isolated. I've talked about this so many times. Vivek Murthy, I think he's outgoing Surgeon General, made his primary focus to be about loneliness and isolation. This is a tough time that we're going through. And now we're having to ask ourselves, what does it mean to be human? Because we have the alternative, which is, what does it mean to be AI?
Right.
And so for the first time in maybe our species, we have to make those boundaries, back to your words earlier about what it means to be human, because we have to protect that and nourish that
100%.
Because we have so many other options on the menu that are non-human to do what could be human things. So in some ways, this is a premium service that maybe 20 years ago would have been like, hey, well, another keynote speaker talking about, emotional intelligence stuff. I think it's more important than ever. So thank you so much for being here and for the work that you're doing. Yeah. It's really great.
It's my honor. I love it. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you for listening to Leadervation with Dean Newlund. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to learn more about Dean or Mission Facilitators Leadership, go to mfileadership.com. That's mfileadership.com, or check the show notes. Reimagine, facilitate, flourish. Transform your leadership success with Leadovation.